Hello and welcome to the Hoop Troop podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me as they do on all of our shows is my cousin Luke Drobner.
What's up, guys?
And my brother Mike O'Connor.
Hey.
We've been off for a little while, but we're back. The NBA, now we're like close to 20, 30 games into the season, so some solid sample sizes. Any speculation we had at the beginning of the season is either confirmed or firmly rejected by this point. And in this episode, Luke's got some thoughts for us. Luke's going to lead us through a little discussion on some of the things that stood out to him. And if you just had some questions about, some weird situations going on in the NBA, because there's quite a few right now. But Luke, without further ado, I will turn this over to you. You drive the boat.
Cool. Thank you. I guess the first thing that's on my mind is that this week in fantasy, Mike and I are matched up. Easy win. It's excited just to move up in the standings a little bit, and yeah.
Can I ask you a question? This can go around, and then we'll get back to Luke's thoughts. Being part of the fantasy league has required my paying attention to people I would have never paid attention to. Who's been your sleeper under the radar? Like, wow, night to night, I've never noticed this person provides so much value to their team and then yours. I don't know if you have someone.
I have one, and it's more because I just look at the trade market and I'm like, I could no. I'm surprised because I thought about just throwing him in to try and sweeten stuff, and I'm like, I actually can't do that because he's currently putting up numbers that not superstars, but the B-list level of players.
Ball.
No, well, yes, but no. Tyler Hero is putting up crazy numbers. His past 15 games, he's averaging 18, 7, and 6. Pretty damn good numbers for a guy coming off the bench. Granted, Jimmy Butler's been out, but still pretty intrigued by what's been coming out there. And I really kind of reluctantly added him, but no, I'm very much excited about Tyler Hero.
I didn't know that.
Which I figured we were going to talk about the Heat today, so I was actually saving that. But yeah, he's actually very much living up to that contract.
It's actually a down year for him. He averaged 21 last year. He's averaging 19 this year. So
he got hurt, but I also think his rebound and assist numbers are up. No, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, he's definitely rebounding a little more. Passing's about the same.
Yeah. Still, I'm encouraged, and his more recent games have been better too since coming back from injury. But again, that could have something to do with Jimmy Butler being hurt.
Yeah, scored 26 in the one game they had this month. So
yeah. But yeah, that's it. That's my one standout.
I want to say that there's nobody who's a sleeper on my team. I think everybody I drafted with full confidence.
It's because they're not sleeping, Luke. They're in full-blown comas.
Yeah, what's hurting me the most is Jakob Poeltl and Jarrett Allen have been out. So I'm barely out rebounding people with just Jokic as my only center. But
you want Steven Adams?
I'll be okay, thank you. But Jabari Smith Jr., who hasn't necessarily shot the ball well, actually does a lot of other things well: rebounding, steals, blocks, defense, things like that. So
this rookie class is interesting.
Rookie class is interesting.
They're far more impactful than I think. I knew they were going to come in. We're going to have some NBA ready guys, but they're doing a lot more than I think anyone really expected them to right off the bat.
Yeah, I think when we think about rookies, obviously, we think about Paolo and Jaden Ivey. Ben Mathurin's been really great. But I think one thing that we mentioned earlier today, just through general conversation, was the upcoming draft class and the number of guys in that draft class who might be good. And I know we talked a little bit about what happens if Victor Wembanyama is just ball, and we can also think about the standings and how things are shaking out with the Spurs losing 16 of their last 17 or something like that. So,
oh yeah, and that's so. I know we've had this discussion at a glance from before the season started and right as the season started, we were talking about it. But I think realistically, when that December, 15th, 14th, whatever the day is, when all contracts signed in free agency are eligible to be traded, I think we're going to see a lot of movement pretty early on. Because if you look at some of these teams towards the bottom or some of the middling teams, and I'm sure they're going to come up, the Chicago Bulls, the Washington Wizards, the Timberwolves, the Heat, the Dallas Mavericks are going to make moves. The Knicks potentially, you're going to have a lot of these teams pick a side, and they're going to pick a side soon because this draft class does look damn good. and like obviously it's highlighted by tank for Victor or Scoot Henderson, but a lot of these other guys seem like they're going to be solid rotation pieces at a minimum early on.
Yeah, I think I spammed the Twitter group with all those like Draft Express highlight tapes.
And I mean, I know it's early, so it's hard to tell who's really going to stand out, but there's some good.
But I mean, like I think we talked about it earlier today when we were having this conversation. Like, what happens if Victor Wembanyama is a bust and he ends up being ball? Like, oh my God, so terrible. But also, there's like 5 guys who are like 6'10" and shoot the ball. There's a couple point guards who look really great. So I don't know if you have something to add here, Mike.
I have nothing to add there. I know nothing about the draft. I know nothing about the draft. I just thought, like, and we were texting about it earlier. I just think it's interesting. You have to do it. If you're in the realm of being able to acquire Victor, you probably have to tank, but like it's still a gamble, even if it seems like it's a short shot. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
No. You never know, especially with the big lanky lanks like that. Like I know that he's different than Chet, but like Chet immediately gets hurt because they're big.
Hitting like through the legs, behind the back, one-legged step back 3-pointers.
I mean, balls rebounding and like hero stepping, and he's doing all this stuff. You know?
Oh no, I think the Nuggets absolutely botched that one, no question about it. But at that same time, like there's always going to be that concern of like all it takes is one rolled ankle, and that's a derailed career. I mean, not that Kristaps was even remotely as agile as either of those two are, but guys like that, when they're that tall, it doesn't take much. It's one awkward landing, and that could really derail it. So again, I don't want to put that out there because obviously I don't want to see either of those guys get hurt, but it just seems like it's so common through the history of the league, and especially recently.
Luke just mentioned he's glad we brought up Chet, and I'm excited to see where he has to go with it. But like Victor Wembanyama could turn into he gets drafted, and then we're talking in 2025, and he hasn't played more than like 40 games across 3. It could be. You just never know. I mean, it just goes to it's a gamble. No
Greg Oden. There's a reason Greg Oden went 1 overall, and then and I wouldn't even call him a bust. It's just injuries and things derail his career, and like it's tough because we are kind of projecting this. We're just saying, oh, he's going to get hurt. And like it's hard for us not to assume that just based on the years of information we have of guys that size with that skill set. But you never know if he doesn't play as aggressive going to the rim. Like we've seen, he does kind of play more as a perimeter player.
Limits your value.
Yes, agreed. But I'm just saying, if you want to preserve him from an injury perspective and have him play more as like like a shooting guard almost, then that changes things.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting we bring up Chet because Chet didn't even get injured playing in the NBA game. He got injured at the Seattle Pro-Am, and he like rolled his ankle on LeBron, and now he's out for the whole year. So
it takes one awkward landing.
It does take one awkward landing, and also, I mean. We see it with other guys like Ben Simmons sat out a whole year, and Embiid sat out a lot of time at the beginning. Blake Griffin won Rookie of the Year. Ben Simmons, who I already mentioned, also won Rookie of the Year, and technically their second year. But it's just interesting to think about, and like how patient are you willing to be with someone like Victor Wembanyama?
And I think the answer is you have to be. It's just you have to be. You have to take him number 1, and you have to be patient with whatever it is because
I don't even think you need patience with the guy. He's going to come in and be effective. But anyway, we're going to talk plenty about him in the future.
So here we're thinking a little bit like, the standings continue to move around, kind of understanding what teams are going to be making moves. Do you guys have any trades that you think would be valuable for both teams in the trade, or is it a 3-way deal, or what are you guys thinking? I know like Jay Crowder has always been mentioned in these trade talks. The Spurs got guys they want to move. The Mavericks want to add some more to their roster, right? What are you guys thinking?
So I saw actually, and obviously I know we talked a little bit about Jay Crowder, and just that's something that will happen soon. Like I think that's just an inevitable one. But the interesting one that I just saw was that the Mavericks are interested in Derrick Rose. I don't know what a trade would look like there, but it's more just like the Knicks kind of clearing space. So I'm guessing it would be some picks or whatever. But I actually think Derrick Rose would be a nice compliment to Luka, but I don't think that really moves the needle for them. Like they just added Kemba Walker too. Like I don't get what the Mavericks are doing. They're really
didn't they say Kemba Walker's knee is busted up though?
I saw that. Yeah, it's not looking great.
So, and they also have Facu Campazzo, who they signed on a vet minimum deal.
They waived him to sign Kemba.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just
doesn't it seem like they're clearly they've put the cards on the table that they're looking for a facilitator. Which team isn't? You know, they all are, but like
Yeah.
it seems like that's what they feel like they're in dire need of. That someone that other than Luca,
A
someone
facilitator or like a scorer, like a Zach Levine.
they're trying to replace Brunson. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And they don't have that right now. And it's not all because of Brunson, it's because of Luca, but there's a reason they got to the West Conference final. Yeah, there could be like fluky playoff circumstances, but they got there because they had another person who you could trust with the basketball.
And I think that whole argument takes on two different levels, because you obviously look at, yes, losing Brunson. I don't think anyone really expected it to have this much of an impact on how their offense looked, or for that matter, how the Knicks look. I think Brunson has shown he's far better than anyone really thought he was with Dallas, just because Luka overshadowed everyone. So that's one element of it, which I definitely, Michael, you're right. But then two, when they traded Kristaps to get Dinwiddie and Bertans, I think they expected Dinwiddie to be like a Brunson and like be able to kind of take that load off, and he really hasn't. There were signs that might have been the case towards the end of last season in the playoffs a little bit. And it's not like he's bad now, but he's just not nearly what they expected him to jump up and be. And obviously, Bertans is just trash, but they really Bertans don't have much. And then, like, they have so much money going into Tim Hardaway Jr. and Spencer Dinwiddie and Bertans. Like, it's just, they cannot field a strong enough roster around Luka right now unless they move some of that money.
So, I mean, looking at Dinwiddie this year, averaging 16, 3 rebounds, 5 assists on a pretty solid efficiency, shooting 46% from the field and almost 40% from 3. You don't think that's a good piece?
I think it's good, but again, that's your second best option? And like, I think
Christian Wood,
who Jason Kidd hates and like won't play. It's just a bad situation. Like, all of their moves have been like counterproductive from the strengths of their roster in the past. And so adding a Derrick Rose or any other of those rumors that seem like really marginal pieces, like, don't, to me, indicate that, oh, we're going to make a deep playoff run again. To me, they might just be a playing team at best right now with this roster. Even with a move they can make, barring some major trade, I don't think they have a high ceiling this year at all. So why even trade for Derrick Rose?
Fair enough. What about like the Bulls, who are near the bottom of the standings in the Eastern Conference? They are currently sitting at 12th. They have guys like Vujovic, DeRozan. Obviously, like Lonzo Ball could be somebody who they might move. Levine, DeRozan. They got a lot of guys on that roster, and it's kind of thinking like who's young enough to stick around and kind of allow to develop a little bit, and who is on the chopping block. Go ahead, Mike.
I keep getting, you guys know, I keep getting faked out on Twitter by what's real and fake. Was that report true that the Bulls are saying Levine and DeRozan are untouchable?
I mean, I'm sure they're going to put that out there. Like, they're not going to fully commit to like, oh, we're blowing it up or like we're doing this. Like, I think they're going to try and drive up the asking price by saying, no, you can't, until people start begging.
Does it not?
That said, like, why? What are they working towards? And we were saying it last year when things kind of, I know they had that hot start, but then they kind of came back to earth. We were like, where are they going with this? Then they didn't really make any changes. Like, where are they going with this? Like, there's really I don't see a championship in sight for them. I don't see an Eastern Conference final. Hell, I hardly even see a second round of the playoffs in their future. So, I think it is time to load up. You don't have your pick this year unless you're in the top 3. Why not try and, I mean, at this point, again, looking at their record, they have a 9-14 record. They're 6th in the Tankathon standings. Try and move up. Trade everything, and do it soon and lose a ton of games and hope you get him. Keep Patrick Williams because he's young. Keep some of your young guys. Maybe even keep Kobe White, who I know has been on the trade block in the past. And just see what you can get and be bad for the next few years.
What do you think, Mike?
Oh my God. Well, it's low-hanging fruit. Again, I'm not your money guy. I don't know anything. But how are you not sitting down with the Lakers, with Pelinka, and figuring this out and taking both picks, sending DeRozan and Vucevic to LA and figuring out the money side? And
I really think the Lakers are interesting because they're winning games right now, and there's so much less pressure to move Russ.
Right.
Maybe you don't have to.
You would have to match that money. That's
That's
how the money would work.
I still personally think a Lakers team without Russ and with DeRozan and Vucevic is better than this Lakers team.
Oh, I mean, without a doubt. But do you want to get rid of 2 picks to do that? Like, are you definitively winning a championship with Vucevic and DeRozan? You might actually. That team becomes a lot closer.
I mean,
but you have to give up 2 unprotected first-round picks to get there. Is that worth it?
Matthew and Luke, put yourselves in Pelinka's seat. You have I'm putting AD back in here, 2 of the top 10, 2 of the best players in the league that you really can't bet against. You've seen it work before. I don't know. It just feels like, and what are you waiting for? Then what's your, again, with what you said about the Bulls, what's your end game then?
I think the Bulls, yes, you're absolutely, that's something you're weighing, because if you're like, you know what, we're punting on this, we're trying to get some of our draft capital back, and that is likely good draft capital. Because also, if you're trading aging DeRozan and aging Vucevic there, realistically, the Lakers don't get better in those years where those picks are going to be made. So they're still going to be valuable assets. So I do think from a Bulls perspective, yes. I think the question is more a Lakers perspective, because they're very lucky that Anthony Davis is playing at an MVP level right now. He's doing things that I don't think anyone really expected from him this season. But again, on the flip side of that, they're in a very easy part of their schedule. Yes, they beat the Bucks, but still they lost to the Pacers on a buzzer beater. So like, I'm almost offsetting that. We could say that one either way. But my point being, if you're the Lakers, like, yes, you bought yourself a little time to be patient, make the right deal, and maybe see if anyone else gets a little desperate to say, okay, we got to get into the tank race. We don't care. We'll take 1 pick. Like, I think they have to be smart about it. They have to just wait a little bit.
If you're the Lakers and you have guys on your roster like Patrick Beverley and Kendrick Nunn who have now been replaced by Dennis Schroeder, I mean, Patrick Beverley has a $13 million deal. Kendrick Nunn has $5.2 million deal. What does the 2 picks get you? And I mean, now you have $18 million worth of salary matching, and then buyout markets, bet mins, or you can fill that second spot, especially because it's not like Kendrick Nunn's all that special. So just like thinking, what do the Lakers need? What do they need to add? Totally. What are we thinking about?
No, and that's, again, it depends who you trade while you're in the process of blowing it up, because that could obviously
let's say they can trade for anybody in the league. They're not going to add another superstar. They're going to keep Davis, James, and Westbrook together. What type of role players do you think they need to add to
all that
push
matters
themselves?
Is shooting. Literally all that matters is shooting. If that's all you're trading is those 2, get me guards who can shoot.
Do you think like a Buddy Hield would make a big difference?
Totally. I mean, I think anyone of that mold, where they're going to come in and be able just to catch and shoot threes from LeBron and maybe like attack closeouts too, because LeBron and AD are going to absorb so much pressure.
Sure.
That's exactly what we need. So I think that's like a perfect fit. And we've been saying that for so long. But I also do, like, I think it totally depends on what teams are willing to blow some things up. Because you could make a couple of those trades from a few different areas. Like, again, like I was saying before, like Utah, after their hot start, is now losing again. They're going to want to get rid of a lot of their guys. I'm sure there's avenues to get some of them from the Jazz who would fit very well. I'm sure Bogdanovich from the Pistons is going to be available at some point.
Didn't they give him an extension?
They did, but that doesn't mean they're not going to trade him. Like I still think at the end of the day, why not? The Spurs are going to move people. I'm sure Houston would be open and moving like an Eric Gordon, and I'm not saying that's perfect, but it would fit the mold. I'm just saying that's like more of a last resort. Maybe
I think the Spurs would be really interesting. Josh Richardson, Jakob Poeltl, I think would fit perfectly on the Lakers roster.
Definitely, but again, so that's kind of my point. Is they have enough options out there where they can be patient. So as much as you want to say like, oh, go get DeRozan, Vucevic, and get rid of the 2 picks, it's fine. Like, yeah, that would make the team better, but there might be a better deal if you just, you bought yourself a little time by turning it around and winning 8 out of 10. Wait a little bit.
So then answer my question, because I don't understand it. How much time do they have? When do you need to realistically transact?
I think it needs to happen sooner rather than later. I think they're building a lot of momentum right now.
But I think it's a double-edged sword, because I think the Lakers have to act sooner than later because you do want to get yourself into a better playoff position, get into a rhythm, and like get everyone playing together and cohesive. But on the flip side of that is the teams trading these guys, they don't want to win many games. So they want to move these guys sooner than later. So, like, for example, and even this isn't even the perfect example, the Knicks want to win games right now. But like, what are they doing? They're a middling team. They're going to be a 500 team at best, really. Like, what are you doing playing? Again, I know I'm bringing up his name again, but Derrick Rose, what are you doing with him? Julius Randle, I'm sure, is a trade candidate, and they're accepting calls on him. Like, I just think all these veteran type players, you start to look to move. And like a lot of teams are like that, where they're stuck in no man's land in that play-in territory, and they start to move guys. Like I'm sure, again, we mention Indiana all the time because they're always in that conversation. But I just think those are the teams to target. Atlanta like is looking to move John Collins again. Not that that's a fit with the Lakers specifically, but you're going to see all of these teams who need to make changes like start to get a little desperate at some point. Maybe you don't have to give up as much. That's my only thing with the Lakers.
Find the right deal.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Staying on the Bulls, something that a domino that should probably fall on the Bulls is Caruso should be somewhere else. And I think that's super interesting. And I think it's going to make insert team way more interesting. And I think it should be the Bucks. I think the Bucks should. I mean, I know the Jay Crowder thing is going to be happening, but if the Bucks could get someone like him, and obviously I think he's linked to the Warriors. So like,
yeah. Well, did you see Steve Kerr go up to him after the game and be like,
"I wish I had to have you"?
Yeah, or something like that. And it's just like, all right, like
Caruso
where are these? Where's tampering when we need it?
But Caruso would be an instant add to any team, but personally, he would put the Bucks even more firmly over the edge.
I think if the Bucks could somehow figure out a Grayson Allen, Alex Caruso swap, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I think
it's also if I'm the Bulls and I still want to try and compete with Levine and DeRozan, do I necessarily want to move Caruso?
Well, that's the thing. No, but if you do decide it's time to blow it up, you truly, as much as you can get for anyone, I'd say there's no one that's truly off limits. Maybe Patrick Williams is the only one. Everyone else, I think, is up for grabs. You might not want to trade Lonzo. Maybe you want to see if he can get healthy and like up his trade value a little bit and maybe dump him down the road or something like that. But for the time being, that's how I feel. And maybe I'm being a little too harsh, but they're in no man's land. They're going nowhere. They're always going to be stuck in the middle. And I don't know, because it's not like they can do a hell of a lot to really change the tide here. So get rid of everyone. Whoever anyone wants. Do the Mavericks want Goran Dragic? I know they wanted him this offseason. Here, take him. We'll take, I don't care, a second round pick for him. Whatever it is. So
I feel like we've talked a little bit about some sellers like the Bulls. Who do you think is in most need of a buy right now? If you're just looking through the standings, excluding the Lakers.
All right. So it's hard to narrow this down, but I'll try. I think realistically, the biggest buyer should be Brooklyn needs a center, a better center than Nick Claxton. Just some sort of defensive anchor that they don't currently have. I don't think they're the biggest buyer. I think Phoenix is in dire need of a power forward, especially with Cam Johnson out.
I also think very quietly Dario Saric has come back, so
but like
that's
again,
also a boost.
Yeah, it's a boost, but it's not enough. Like their roster looks almost identical to the one last year. And granted, Chris Paul is now out, and Devin Booker has very much shouldered the load, and he's again in the MVP conversation at this point. And I'm assuming that'll kind of fade as if Chris Paul comes back. They're being weird about his injury, by the way, which I don't know. We don't necessarily have to talk about it, but they're not disclosing it, and he's just like out indefinitely. So we'll see about that. But so I think the Suns probably need to do something. If Dallas is very serious, they do, and it would have to be something big. Not so much the Warriors, because I still do believe in their younger talent, but I think you can make the case that if a team wants to take a flyer on Wiseman, you go
does
and trade
Wiseman still have value?
Right. Someone tanking will absolutely be like, I will take him as a project and see if I can get him right, because he does have a unique skill set. Yeah. And I mean, he makes how much now?
It's still a rookie contract, so it can't be that much. 5 million, 6 million.
No, it's 9.6 million. That's significant. You could get a rotation piece or two for that money if you were to flip them. So the Warriors, if they are really looking to win now and repeat, they're definitely a team I'd keep an eye on. I don't know. No one else like screams it to me. I think the
Miami.
Bucks could make a. Yeah, Miami needs a power forward. They're probably the big one because Jimmy Butler's out here saying that we're winning a championship, but they're not going anywhere if they don't have a power forward.
It's confidence.
I mean, what do you think they're winning a championship?
No, if you're not the Celtics or the Bucks, you're not coming out of the East.
Right, and I think their issue is offense. So they're in a unique spot too. They would fit the Jay Crowder mold, but the problem is the Suns want a power forward back for Jay Crowder, which is going to be very hard to do unless it's a 3-team trade. But who the hell knows? I don't know. Otherwise, like Toronto doesn't have to buy. I'm looking at the teams that are like in the playoff hunt, but not great. The Sixers just need to get healthy. I don't necessarily think they need to make changes.
How do we feel about the Blazers?
They're another one that,
They're
like, yeah, Michael, go for it.
I think they're just regressing. Like I always take a look at the standings each day, and then
Mhm.
you see the different logos moving slowly up and slowly going to where they're supposed to be. And I think the Blazers are slowly going where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean,
So I
they
don't
had
really
that-
know what you're supposed to do with that.
They
Damon's
had
been
that-
out for a significant amount of time.
He's
Yeah.
missed a lot of time, but Simons has played really well in his absence.
And Grant,
And Grant.
Jeremy Grant's also looked very good.
I think, and again, it's if they're willing to do so. I still don't love Nurkic. So I think if you bring in a more effective offensive power forward and let Jeremy Grant play the 3, because he is a little more versatile, probably not the preferred approach, but I also don't love Jeremy Grant at the 4.
Did you see Damian Lillard was like, someone was like, what happens if the Blazers acquired Jared Vanderbilt? And Damian Lillard retweeted it. Did you see that?
Oh, I didn't, but that's interesting. But yes, see, that's like the type of guy I kind of have in mind.
And Jared Vanderbilt's the very versatile defender, plays power forward, center,
Right.
could give them lineups, things like that. I also think it's a huge need they have. Obviously, we talk about Jeremy Grant, but I don't know. You're going to play Jeremy Grant 48 minutes at power forward, and when you take him off the floor, who's coming in? And I know I've joked about Justice Winslow, and you guys are like, ew, disgusting.
Because it is. But that's why, like, I look at and again, not to model everything off the Celtics, but they look damn good. Like a Grant Williams would be what I have in mind. Someone who's going to go play physical defense, can play guard multiple positions, drain some threes, get you some rebounds here or there. Just some filler like that. I think would be a really good fit on that team. But as I've said in the past, and I'll say it again now, Portland's pretty much in the same position as the Bulls with me. A little better, just because they have Dame, who I think is better than anyone on the Bulls. But, like, where are they going? They're not winning anything.
Yeah.
And they have good young pieces. So at this point, why not go try and build around that timeline? What are you doing? Like, they're all over the place.
Yeah. I think Jared Vanderbilt's a really great fit. He doesn't shoot a lot of threes, but he does shoot threes well.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to think about and, see where things are going in Portland. I think they're a little better than what their record shows them. I could definitely see them be a play-in team, but they're definitely sitting on that 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of range. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. So definitely could be a move in there. I think another team that's really interesting is the Kings. They built a lot of hype with Light the Beam.
The Beam team.
So
I'm all in. I'm all in on the Kings. And this is something that we were saying over the summer is I loved every move they made. Like they went and got shooters around their stars.
mm-hmm.
And Fox and Sabonis are both playing like stars. And then on top of that, like Keegan Murray, who I obviously thought Ivy should have been picked before in the draft, has looked solid. But then everyone else around them, Herter is lights out this year, like on far more volume than he ever had with the Hawks. Like they went and made changes that are paying dividends. I do think they probably could use another big on the roster, but nothing that they're in urgent need of changing. I don't think they're winning a championship this year, but they've at least put a foundation in place where a couple years from now they could be scary.
Isn't it weird? And you can make arguments about Sabonis and Fox, I guess, but how many times in NBA history it was a mutual win in the trade, but how often has a team been praised for how smart it is in giving away the best player in the trade? They gave away, I think, clearly the best.
Oh, yeah.
Halliburton's been insane.
Undeniably, yes.
But it's so fascinating that we can still be like, we're all in on the Kings. What smart moves, and they gave away the best.
It doesn't mean I like the trade, because part of me thinks that you never get rid of a guy like that. But yes, it did work out for them. We'll see down the line, what Halliburton and the Pacers turn into, and potentially what the Kings turn into. Because if they don't amount to anything in this window, like, I'll give it 4 years if nothing happens. Like, if they're not like really contending in 4 years, it's a failure, like, undeniably. But it's looking like they can get there. And
I think both the Pacers and the Kings walked away with something. I think the Pacers got younger, which is what they needed, and I think the Kings kind of got rid of a backlog of guards that they had. They just had a ridiculous amount of point guard, shooting guard type guys. So
right, yeah.
I mean, they got a little more. They got some more balance on their roster.
What's the ceiling this year then for Sacramento?
5 seed, I'd say. Because right now, I mean, they're hugging that right now. They're in what? They're in
4
fifth.
right now.
They're in 5th.
They are in 5th.
Yeah. So they have as many wins as the Warriors, Clippers, and Portland. And then they played 2 less games than all of them. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think their highest is going to be a 5 seed. Lowest is missing the playoffs. Realistically, like, I just think there is a chance objectively that they could miss. Because if you look at the teams,
I think they're a play-in lock. I think they started off the season well. They've shown me enough where I feel comfortable saying that they're a play-in lock. I can't see them missing the play-in this year.
Here's why I say that there's a chance. Because if you look at the teams behind them, the Warriors could and probably will move above them. The Clippers could and probably will move above them. And so that will put them at the 7. And then from there, you have Minnesota, who wants to win, the Lakers, who want to win, Dallas, who wants to win, Portland, who wants to win. You could
Kings want to. It's a tough West.
Right. You could convince me that some combination of those teams move above them. Maybe an injury happens or something, but, like, I don't know. I do think that, yes, they are most likely going to be a play-in to just play-off lock. So it's fun, it's different, and they haven't been there in God knows how long. So it's fun to break the streak. And also just everything about the beam. Like, I feel like
they have energy. That's what I just mean. Like, I've never felt so
very rarely
for the Kings. Like, they're irrelevant except for the fact that they win games and then everyone's like, light the beam, light the beam. I'm like, oh my God.
But very rarely do you get this combination of, like, a team has been so bad for so long. It's honestly, I'm going to compare them to what the Detroit Lions are doing right now, and they're not as good, but, like, everyone is kind of like, come on, the Lions. Like, they're fun, their offense is exciting, and they're winning, and, like, the Lions don't have this, but, like, light the beam, and, like, they just shoot a purple laser into the air. Like, everything about it is so ridiculous and funny. They're in Sacramento. Like, it's such a perfect combination of, like, bad and irrelevant that everyone loves it. It's kind of like, it's like a bad movie. It's like Godzilla versus King Kong. I'm going to watch it and I'm going to love it. And, like, yeah, it's bad and it might not end well, but, like, I'm going to enjoy it the whole time.
That's a good point. But then what does that say about the Kings? And it goes back to the ceiling.
They have work to do.
I think we're all laughing because it's like this big joke. It's like the fringe friend group kid in middle school who is the butt of the jokes, but he still hangs out with the crew. Like, you don't want to be, if you're the Kings, you don't want to be that, but you are. I think everyone's using light the beam in this tongue-in-cheek way because it's funny. So
that's
a very interesting take.
Here's the flip of that, though. It's no different than the Bucks before they got good had Cream City jerseys, and everyone was making those jokes about them being, like, you literally, it happens, and the Bucks obviously got out of it and got into being contenders. The Kings can. Like I was saying, they have this window now where if they can add pieces on here and guys can improve, like if Keegan Murray, like, makes a jump year 1 to year 2 that a lot of players do make, because I think their big weakness now is going to be that wing. That's where they're going to have to find that strength. And maybe it means bringing someone else in while Keegan Murray's on a rookie deal and you have some other guys not making a ton of money. Or, guys take leaps, Kevin Hurt, like kind of like Kevin Hurt.
They have Harrison Barnes, who is, I don't know, affordable, but definitely dependable. So, like we said at the beginning, I like the moves they made. I think they could be dangerous in a couple of years, but this year is just kind of them figuring out who they are. They hired a good coach in Mike Brown, so I'm excited for Kings basketball. They feel good, and I hope they can continue their success.
100%.
So
mean,
Um,
going back to the fantasy thing, I follow Fox is on my team, so I'm following him. He's awesome.
He's great.
he's been good this year. He's
Yeah.
averaging like 24. He's 23 points a game, and he's always been that kind of guy. Is he an all-star? Is he not an all-star? So I think this year we might see him be an all-star just because the team's good. So
We're gonna wind up having an all-star discussion at some point. I don't know how he could make it though in this West.
it's a tough West.
Well, that's for another day.
I think another team that's really surprising this year is the Pelicans, who are currently sitting in second in the West.
I wanted to talk about them too. Thank you.
Obviously, they have a great roster now that Zion's back. He fills a lot of holes that they had before. And I mean, Jose Alvarado with a 38-point game the other day. Again, another team where last year they had such a great energy. You really wanted to root for them. And they turned it around here. They're showing that they're a really good team.
So they are probably, if not the most, then they're in the top 3 most balanced teams in the NBA. Just their roster is so perfectly deep. It's so perfectly constructed. Everyone complements everyone. Everyone can play multiple positions and do, you can have so many different roster combinations for any game. It's perfect. And the interesting thing about that, and the reason why I'm so encouraged by them being number 2 in the West right now, is that Brandon Ingram, Zion, and CJ McCollum have all missed time, like substantial time, to start this year, and they still have that record. So it just goes to show how deep that roster is and how much you can rely on these I'm going to air quote, role players to carry the load. Because even when your stars are out, they're winning games.
They have 7 guys averaging double-digit scoring, and they have 2 guys who are averaging 20 or more. Brandon Ingram with 21, Zion with 24 almost. And then, I mean, like, some of these guys who are even just like defenders who are averaging 10 points, like Herb Jones, I like to.
Yeah, but
his name's Herbert,
I know.
It's funny, and he's playing really well this year, right? Obviously, he's a good defender. He's averaging 11 points per game. So,
and yes, absolutely. Really, I mean, Trey Murphy absolutely stepping up. I do, like, as much as I was a little skeptical of the trade when it happened, the CJ McCollum trade looks great in hindsight. I mean, he's a perfect fit with these guys. The one thing I wish they had that they kind of don't is like a real facilitating point guard.
Yeah, but they have so much playmaking. Like, I'm not uncomfortable with saying that Zion's a bad playmaker. I mean, Zion's averaging 4 assists. Brandon Ingram's averaging 5. CJ was 6. Even some of their bigs, like Jonas Valanciunas is averaging 2. Herb is averaging 2 assists. Najee Marshall, who's their backup power forward, is averaging 2 assists, right? Like, guys down here, Devontae, and like their roster is so deep. I recognize names up and down this roster, right? Like Devontae Graham is their 10th leading scorer. It's just insane.
And also, I mean, Dyson Daniels just the other night had 10 assists. Like, he's a guy who can facilitate. I know he's a rookie and whatnot, but you do have plenty of guys who can just step in. And again, it gets back to my point that it's so encouraging that so many guys are contributing at a high level like this. They could win the championship this year. I truly believe that.
That's a big take. I'm gonna write that down for you.
They could win the championship this year.
Shouldn't to bring it kind of connected, I think the Bulls should take notes. The Pelican success comes in a couple different ways, and I was shaking my head at the beginning because my conspiracy theory forever has been it's just been bestowed upon them. It's been handed to them.
Yeah, that lottery was rigged.
I think Zion was handed to them. I think it was bullshit, to be perfectly honest. And not just because I'm a Knicks fan.
No, it wasn't even. It was them getting the number 1 and the Grizzlies getting the 2, because if the Grizzlies would have given the Celtics their pick that year, if they weren't in I think it was top 3 protected or 4 protected. So they gave the Grizzlies 2, so the Celtics then didn't have that draft capital to go trade for Anthony Davis. Like, it was all in the works. But whatever.
Yeah,
I'm doing the Charlie Day meme, but like
it frustrates me. It frustrates me because I think that was just given to them. And
I know.
But then you combine all the moves, and the Bulls should be taking notes. You wind up fleecing a team for Anthony Davis. You wind up getting, probably, even though it's working out for the Bucks, more than Jrue Holiday's worth, maybe. Like, you make really nice trades getting rid of your best players because you're going nowhere with them. So you combine those two things, and then you hit on a couple drafts.
I actually think it's more like the Magic, to be honest, than looking at the Pelicans, because you don't have this like young star, like top 75 players of all time star. but you have plenty of guys that other teams will trade for. So like the way that the Magic moved Vucevic, the way that they moved everyone on that team. I mean, they traded Fournier to the Celtics and got picks. They traded like they stripped that roster for parts and it worked and they got picks. And it's just coincidental that part of that was from the Bulls. But look, right now, I'm saying they have to start tanking because if they're in no man's land, if they're the 7th pick, it's going to the Magic. So like do what they did. And honestly, you could even go a step further. Like the Magic didn't trade Terrence Ross, who I think they could have gotten a lot for a couple of years ago. But like now look at the Magic. They have plenty of good young pieces. Paolo looks legit. Bol looks great.
It's about
Wendell
finding
Carter,
the
who they
right deals.
right. Make the right deals, trade them. But yes, absolutely.
And
there's something to be said.
But then a mix of being given Zion. And at some point, a bad enough team is going to be given that. I think.
Let's
Do
flip
you
it
feel
then.
that the Magic were given Paolo?
No.
No.
And look at the Celtics. Look at the Celtics with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. All of that is because of that Nets trade. Like all of it. Everything they're going to be one of the best teams for the next 10 years if they get this right.
Yeah, I mean, we see Danny Ainge do it all the time. You just traded Rudy Gobert for like the most massive haul of all time, and Rudy Gobert sucks ass on the Wolves now.
That's Timberwolf malpractice, but that's beside the point. But anyway,
it was Celtics malpractice. The Nets malpractice. They were like, we have to win now. Let's trade for.
It was when they moved. Farts. It was when they moved to Brooklyn, and they had to sell. They had to fill seats, which they still can't do. By the way,
that's what I have to say. New ownership wants to make a splash. Timberwolves are under new ownership, right? So,
yeah, but that's exactly it. I think you take a page out of those books, and before it's too late, because if you wait too long, you're not going to get that same value. At some point, you need to read the writing on the wall and just say, "Hey, this isn't it." We have like. I'm gonna like kind of break down the saying, but like their pieces are greater than the sum of their parts, which I know is not the saying, but they're not working together, but they would be great pieces on other teams with different structures. So Start to move them and just blow it up. Because if Vucevic on your team isn't particularly valuable right now, but it's damn valuable on a few other teams. So move him. Same could be said for DeRozan, Levine. Hell, I don't know. You said Caruso. Like you can move all these guys. So you got to make trades like the Pelicans.
Don't do it all at one time, but you should start to look to move maybe one or two of them at a time.
Absolutely. I totally.
All right, let's move. Enough about the Western Conference, some of these other teams. Thinking about the Eastern Conference, I think the biggest storyline in the Eastern Conference is the Boston Celtics being the best team in the NBA. Tatum is playing at an MVP level. I know I disagree with Jaylen Brown also being in the conversation, but he is in the conversation.
He's had a good like last 10 games where he's putting up like similar numbers to Tatum. I still think he falls off, and it's like partly because Jason Tatum is drawing so much attention. That said, I think the bigger takeaway is like, yes, those two are playing like all NBA players on the same team, which is very rare. But then on top of that, you have so many guys on this roster shooting over 40% from three. So this season, you have Al Horford, 46.6%, Grant Williams, 46%, Derek White, 43.7%, Malcolm Brogdon, 49.4%, Sam
So
Hauser,
you just think they're scorching hot right now?
7%, Luke Cornett, 40%, Blake Griffin, 40%.
You just feel that they're hot right now. That's what it comes down to. They're shooting the heck out of the ball. And
do you see it changing?
I mean, you can't shoot 50% from three like Malcolm Brogdon is.
That'll regress. They're still going to be really good though. And then the only other big difference I've seen, and it's because again I follow Tatum because he's on my team. He's dishing the ball. He's facilitating hard, and he's playing really hard, like all the time. It's
4.5 assists per game, a steal and a block. He's playing good defense.
And Jaylen Brown is also amazing. So like the two of them, it's like unheard of that these. And it's not like one amazing point guard and one amazing big guy. It's like 2 3-and-D'ers.
I mean,
they're a lot like the Pelicans, right? We talk about the depth of the Pelicans and how they had 7 guys scoring in double figures. Celtics have 6, and by the way, Tatum's averaging 31 and Jaylen Brown 27. So
it's funny; their numbers are like very similar this year. It's weird to look at. Obviously, Tatum's are slightly better. He's averaging close to 31, 7 or 8 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and a block. And then Jaylen Brown, 27 points, 7 rebounds to Tatum's 8, 3.5 assists to Tatum's 4.3, a steal. They're both even averaging that a game. And then Jaylen Brown averages half a block. But like They're not that much lower. So it's why, like, Luke, I know that you're like, he shouldn't be in the MVP conversation. I do get it. And like I do think there is
I mean,
something to
you
be said.
started with the first comment you made. Jalen Brown's look so good because Tatum requires so much attention, right?
I
And
mean,
I think that's something very valid, right? Like Joel Embiid's not in the conversation for MVP because James Harden is on his team as well.
all right, but I mean, yeah, like I think that's a fair point. But was Dwayne Wade in the conversation in Miami when LeBron was there? Like
No,
Shaq and Kobe at the same time? Like
Shaq and Kobe was different.
I know, but not really. Look at these freaking numbers they're putting up.
I think it's crazy that they're not cannibalizing each other either. That's so weird because they had done that in the past.
It's because they're so efficient.
I think they both play. They can both play on the ball and they can both play off the ball. I think Jalen runs a little more off the ball, which is why we don't see him be as dominant. But
and again, I have to drop, but it's something that I'm thinking about. You don't ever see it in the press or anything about their bond. Do you ever? Are they like best friends? I don't get that.
I don't know.
But it would be cool if they were, but it seems like they're not. And then for a couple seasons there, it was like trade one of them, and they can't play well together. Yeah. So like, are they even friends? I never get the vibe that they are.
I think a lot of that is media saying like, oh, you got to trade one, you got to trade one, you got to trade one. I know I've said it before too. I was like, why not just trade Tatum?
Jalen Brown's also kind of a weirdo. Like he's definitely he's definitely like. I'm not putting him on the same level because he's not, but like he did kind of following in Kyrie's footsteps a little bit with everything that's been going on. I'm sure Tatum is distancing himself slightly from that. Team. No, but I almost think like obviously we're all pointing fingers like, oh, he's been great. The role players have been great, but like at the end of the day, Joe Mazzulla, the head coach, who stepped in after everything with Udoka, like I think it's remarkable that he's gotten everyone to buy in like this and be this good. All right, Michael, we'll see you.
See you guys.
Later.
Luke, I'm going to continue my thought, but I think it's remarkable that he's been able to do that. Like, I think for them to be 19-5, and sure, it's a similar system to what they were running before, but still.
I mean, it's the assistant coach, been there a long time.
But to elevate everyone's play to this level, I mean, I think going in,
I think these guys elevated themselves. I can't help but feel that Tatum really locked in this year. Like, after losing in the championship, I feel like he wants it. I think something interesting is like, I think we see guys like this now who do this all the time. They lock in for the regular season, and then come playoffs times, it gets hard, right? So I'd like to see how far this team can go, because obviously the Bucks are the next most serious threat. Just got Middleton back, so kind of I want to see what that series looks like.
To be honest, I still think it's the Bucks to lose. Like I shouldn't say that's interesting. That way. I shouldn't say it that way. I should say I feel that they're the favorite, but it is still a toss-up. Like
I think they're about the same level, especially because I feel that Tatum this year being on top of the MVP standings has solidified himself as a superstar.
I just like the way the Bucks match up with that team. I really do, and I think they can shoulder the load defensively against that team better than pretty much anyone else in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Like honestly, I think the only team I would put in there that could similarly match their combination of like size and shooting and like positional versatility is like the Pelicans. Like I really think those three teams are like the only one. Those two, the Bucks and the Pelicans, are the only ones that can really match up with the Celtics. So I don't know. Like I think it's gonna be a weird Eastern Conference because to get there, you're gonna have to beat Cleveland, Atlanta, Philadelphia at a minimum, Toronto, Brooklyn, Miami. And then
I don't see Philadelphia as being such a threat because I don't think they can all be on the floor together at one time.
Which they haven't been able to yet this year. So
I think we saw it.
Yes, you're right. But if I know, and that's like a big if.
But we say if we think about other teams that we've said similar topics about, like, we talk about this. We talk about like the Clippers, and it was like, well, Paul George and Kawhi never play together, and what does it look like when they're in the playoffs and they have to be on the floor together, right? Like, is it still the same? Are they just as good? And you see the Mavericks kind of stress them out and push them to 6 a couple times. They lose in the second round, right?
Right.
You need to be healthy. You need to build momentum, and I also think there's tension between Maxey and Harden.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Right, it's not like some of these other teams where everything feels seamless. Like the Celtics, there's no drama. The Bucks, there's no drama, right? But in Philadelphia, I feel like there's drama. I feel like the stars on that team don't get along well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things where Doc Rivers is going to go. I think at some point this season, if they don't really turn it around when they get healthy,
Sure.
I think that's probably going to be the first domino, and maybe you can bring in another coach that can get them all to buy in and work together. And I think the biggest problem is Morey came in and got Harden and assumed it was just going to be the dribble, dribble, dribble show, to quote Charles Barkley, but it can't be. When you have someone as good as Joel Embiid, who was like second in MVP voting last year, you can't make it all about someone else. You can't. And so there has to be far more, there's to be a better distribution of plays in that offense designed for different people. I think if they could hit that, and it doesn't even need to be that precisely, you could have it in the ballpark, and I think it would work. I
think the biggest challenge they're going to face is, can you get the most out of Embiid and Harden while keeping everybody else in rhythm? Because Harden likes the ISO. Obviously, Embiid wants to post up. So like, what type of plays do you run to keep guys like Tobias Harris engaged, and to have guys who get played off the floor, like Matisse Thybulle, we all know is such a great defender, but like I feel like he's barely even playing this year. I think he's playing more because of injuries, but it's just interesting. I think the Sixers have a lot of problems. And then there are other teams that we could talk about being good, but not so much in the conversation of beating the Celtics or the Bucks, like the Cavs, who obviously have a good roster. They have Donovan Mitchell, who is also in the MVP conversation. I mean, he's averaging 30 a game, but are they good enough to beat the Celtics? Are they good enough to beat the Bucks? Are they good enough to beat the Sixers? That's another question. If we're saying the Sixers clearly aren't as good as the top two, and we're like questioning the Cavs and the Sixers, I don't know if you feel the same way.
No. I share a similar view. I think it is definitely a 2-horse race in the East. These other teams are good though. So I think not to get back to our conversation before, those are the teams that need to be buyers at the deadline. They need to go totally prey on some of these teams that are like, screw it, we just want to get into the Victor Sweepstakes, try and add to their roster in complementary ways. Mm-hmm. And that's when I think they can get into that tier. So I think they need to go make a strategic move, probably be the prime mover in all of it, because you can really then set the price. You don't want someone else to go make some trade and have it not be advantageous for you. So I think it is very much contingent on what, and I'm saying trade deadline day moves. Realistically, it's going to be months ahead of time because teams need to make these moves sooner than later this year, especially if you want to beat Boston or Milwaukee. Have to.
Okay.
I'm looking at this, and I just don't think there's any way anyone else could come out of the East.
I really don't. Besides the Celtics and the Bucks, I think those are the only contenders. And even in the West, like, maybe it's just because it's so competitive and all these teams are just good. I really don't see a true contender in the West. I really think that at this point, there are like 4 or 5 teams that I could consider to come out of the West, not because they're so much better than the other teams, better than the competition, but because it's just like anybody's game. Like in a 7-game series, any one of these teams could beat another one.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think Phoenix has looked great. They're an incomplete team. Pelicans have looked great. They're an injury-ridden team. Mm-hmm. Denver has similarly looked great at points. They have issues with injuries. Memphis, same thing, issues with injuries. And like, I don't necessarily think, I'm just going record top down. Yeah. I don't necessarily see Memphis coming out of the West, given the strength of those other teams, but still. But then you get into, the Warriors, the Clippers.
I think if the Warriors and Clippers can get healthy and stay on the floor together and find a rhythm,
I'll never doubt
the Warriors aren't very injured, but
I'll never doubt that top level talent on that team. That said, I think probably, it is riding on a lot. Like, you're exactly right. They are very much reliant on health there. And then in that same vein, like, I don't think the Kings are getting out. I don't think Memphis is getting out. I don't think it's Portland. Definitely not Utah, Minnesota, or Dallas.
Biggest shaker is the Lakers.
The Lakers.
If the Lakers are in it, they have a chance to win it. And I don't want to say that their chances are necessarily great. Obviously if they're up in the standings, but
this roster is weirdly built for the playoffs when you can shorten a rotation. It's not built for an 82-game season. It's just not. And that's why, again, getting back to what we keep saying over and over on this episode, they have to make a move, and they have to make a move soon. because until they do, you're going to burn AD out playing this much. Same with LeBron, for that matter. And then by the time the playoffs do roll around and you get to that point where you need to lean on them, you're not going to be able to. So
yeah, I think I think it would be a different conversation if they started the season hot and they're sitting in third right now.
yes,
You can find ways to rest guys throughout the season.
totally.
Especially,
I think when LeBron was hurt, they were very selective in bringing him back, which is
also
good.
I also think you can ride Russ for 78 games, and it's not
Yes.
like a Russ-led team. If AD and LeBron sit, and Russ is my only guy, in like a Russ on steroids game, I could see them beating bad teams easily.
Absolutely. I mean, look at what he's done coming off the bench when he's not playing with those guys. He's playing very great. He's playing Russell Westbrook basketball, which we've seen in the past. He has willed teams to the playoffs, granted, better construction.
He just
teams,
needs his own team, and I think they found a role for him leading that second unit, which is his team.
But that's also that's his career moving forward. He's never going to be a starting point guard again. So
you don't need to be. I think if you can play 30 minutes off the bench, I think that's a very respectable career. You see a lot of guys.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. But it's not going to be at this price tag anymore after this season. God, no.
Obviously.
But that I also think helps. He could be the best backup point guard in the NBA.
Easily. I think he's, I don't think he's a great player anymore, but he's obviously still a very good player.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are ways to use him. So, he could be, he could be an MVP who also wins a sixth man of the year. I don't know if it's been done before. So
I don't know that he's going to win an MVP, but yeah, sixth man of the year.
Oh yeah, he could win a sixth man of the year. He's already won the MVP.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you meant in the same year. I was like,
no.
That's not happening.
Be the first MVP to then win a sixth man of the year.
Got it. That makes more sense.
Yes.
All right, you got any more notes for me? Or we
No, I think we're burnt out. I'm glad we're wrapping it up a little bit, especially because Mike had to go. But,
yeah. All righty. Well,
lastly,
where
and when is Julius Randle getting traded to?
Okay, this is not a quick discussion, but I think it's happening, and I think it's happening because there is so much pressure now on this front office to undo what they did. Pretty much every move they've made along the way has kind of been a mistake, other than their draft picks. They've nailed the draft.
I thought they did a good job with the Jalen Brunson trade.
The Brunson signing is good.
Brunson.
The Brunson signing is good, but here's the issue with it is everyone else. I think Fournier proved to be a mistake. It was the right idea, but a mistake.
Sure.
You're stuck with that. Trading for Derrick Rose, I guess, was fine, but it was during that, I'm calling it the curse season when they became the 4 seed, because all that did was derail their plan of building slow and whatever. So trading for him, fine. You got rid of Kevin Knox and whatever. Not the end of the world. But trading for Cam Reddish, what did that add? He's a good player. We've seen flashes this season that he can be a good player.
But you gave up a first round pick.
But that was heavily protected. So I'm not all that worried about that. The thing that I'm mad at is yesterday when Tibbs shortens it to a 9-man rotation.
Yeah, he's out of the rotation.
He gets a DNP coach decision. And it's what the hell is going on? Hiring Tibbs is far and away their worst decision they've ever made. They have to write that.
Yeah.
Tibbs has to go. Randall, yes, I actually agreed with giving at the time that extension. It made sense. Coming off that All-NBA season, it made sense. That said, he tanked his stock last season, his trade value. This season, it's back up. He's playing good basketball. He's shooting the ball as good as ever. Now's the time to move him, and there are plenty of teams that would need a power forward right now, an offensive-minded power forward. His contract really is not bad. He's not even making $30 million a year. That's a very much movable contract. If you say, look, give me your garbage expired contracts. Hell, it could even be a 2-year expiring. I don't really care. Give me that. We're going to commit to playing Obi Toppin, Cam Reddish, Emmanuel Quickly, guys like that, way more minutes. So, yes, I think it's coming. I think it's coming this season before the deadline. I don't know when. I don't know where.
$23 million a year.
That's all Randall's making this year? Good Lord, that's a movable contract.
23.7. Next year is 25.6, 27.5, and then a player option for 29.4.
And it's also, those as long as it stays with lower than 30 million throughout all of that, that's crazy, especially considering there's about to be a huge cap hike. So we're 2 years away from that. So
yeah, I think moving him to the Suns would be a great option, but
the Suns makes a ton of sense. The Heat, I think it makes a ton of sense. They need offense at the 4.
Sure.
It's a good fit.
Or you just take shooters from the Heat or something like that. You take a Duncan Robinson for salary matching.
I actually think another one, and it's a little controversial, but when I saw that it was rumored that they wanted Derrick Rose, I thought the Mavericks would actually be a pretty solid fit as like a second option next to Luka.
He's from Dallas too. Randall's
he is from Dallas, and I think it would be good because he needs to be in a situation where he is not definitively the best guy on the court. Obviously, that's a little up for debate with the Knicks. Like, obviously, I think Jalen Brunson is better, and I think we have better guys than him just in general. But if he's clearly playing second fiddle to someone else, I think that's his best situation. So I think something like that could actually weirdly make sense. But we'll see. I think Portland could make sense. Like, again, to kind of fit my mold. It wasn't what I had in mind when I said it, but like them moving Jeremy Grant to the 3 and playing Randall at the 4. I don't love it, but like it's something if Portland really wants to try and make a run. I don't know.
I think Portland needs more of a defensive-minded player, especially because
that's what I was thinking.
Simmons is big and athletic, but I don't think he's a great defender. Dame's here at the end, so
I don't know. The Wizards want him. The Wizards are like weirdly saying they want to compete right now. I just think there are teams that might be like, okay, you know what? We'll take a shot at this.
I think you mentioned it earlier. It's like the Bulls saying DeRozan and LaVine are untouchable. Wizards are like, yeah, we want to compete. We want to win. Yeah. But like, let's be honest. Bradley Beal's not going to play every game. Neither is Porzingis or yeah. I thought it was one thing I did find interesting was Beal coming out and being like, there was nowhere for me to go.
Yeah. I hated that comment. It's a horrible thing. If you're their franchise, you're like, oh God. Like,
yeah, I also
you only stayed because there was nothing better. Good.
You're telling me like the team didn't want to sign you for like 20 million instead of 45, Like,
yeah, come on.
So
yeah, so bad. That's
also
gonna end
boo-hoo, you only make $20 million. I think he's destined to be on that Wizards team for his whole career. And
it's gonna end in disaster. Anything. It's gonna end in like holdouts and them being like go home or whatever. He's gonna
be like John Wall. He's gonna get traded to some really terrible team, and then they're gonna be like, we don't want you here, and he's like, buy me out then. And they're gonna be like, it's
be
too expensive.
I can feel it. I totally can feel it.
He'll get a second chance with somebody good. But he'll be the 7th best player on that team.
Right. But no, I do. I think Randall is getting moved this year. And maybe I'm just, an optimistic Knicks fan. I personally think all the chatter I've been seeing around the team this year, though, is that there is a ton of pressure on that front office right now. So I think they are making some big changes. Whether that's just Tibbs, whether that's like, some of the other role players or whatever, I think there's something in the works for sure.
I think my biggest disappointment this year has been RJ Barrett. I know he started slow and he's had some slumps early, but even then, I kind of expected him to be like a 24, 6, and 4 guy.
So that's the weird thing. He's had weird like 2-week intervals where 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
But I know like that's bad, right? I just want him to be on all the time.
Yes.
Or like I'd rather take the in between, right? Just all the time.
He was similar to this last year, which again, I know we wanted to see more of an improvement, but him
wanted to see consistency
from December on, when I think the Knicks got COVID like middle of December last year. From that point on, he was playing unbelievable basketball. And that's the reason why I think we expected him to be that 24, 6, and 5 guy.
Right. We just wanted to see consistency. Like, you don't have that average 24, 6, and 4, but like just consistency.
So I think there are two things that are happening. One, the pecking order now goes Brunson, Randall, him. So there's less of an opportunity. Two, no one in that starting lineup can shoot the basketball. Grimes can now. Like, Brunson is in a slump shooting. Randall has been better, but he's still not like a great 3-point shooter that you're kicking out to.
RJ's strength, true center.
RJ's strength is designed as like he's going to drive, kick, and create offense. Because of the way everything's going right now, he looks his best when he's out there with Quickly and granted Brunson too, but then other guys who can shoot. When Obi Toppin's on the floor with him, they look better. When Hartenstein's on the floor with him, he looks better.
I think Barrett's best position is small forward, and that's only because I think Quickly and Brunson provide him a lot of room to be himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think there's a lot of times when I watch Knicks games and I'm like, oh my God, why is RJ taking that shot? He's forcing it.
Yeah,
we send videos back and forth of him missing wide open passes too. Again, there are times when he just forces it. I think
a lot of that too is, and not to just totally pile on Tibbs, but he's got to go. over the years, he's enabled that type of play. We've seen it from Randall over and over, and there's no repercussion for it. He's doing it with RJ now too. Like there has to be some sort of intervention from a coach in these situations, some sort of change.
Agreed.
And
Tibbs needs to take him off the floor when he's playing like this.
And Tibbs will not do it. And that's the problem. And that's why Tibbs has to go. There's a double standard of accountability on this team. Obi Toppin misses a shot, he gets yanked. One shot. Whereas you have any of these starters who go and have like copious bad possessions in a row, and they're still out
Tibbs
there.
Picks favorites. I think it's always been like that in his career. You see him just like run guys into the floor because he likes them.
Right. And that's exactly what's happening here, and it is derailing RJ's progress. So my thing is, yes, Randall's getting traded. Yes, Tibbs is getting fired. It's just a question of when. There'll probably be other changes with the roster too, but I think we'll see as a result of that. I think RJ will look better. Obi is going to look like an 8th overall pick who in his 3rd year is still coming off the bench and not even playing 15 minutes a game. Like I'm working myself up right now.
I think the biggest change the Knicks need to make is they need to fire Tibbs, reassess where the roster's at, then move Randall. If it's right to move Randall. Right?
Unless there's a good trade there now for Randall, then you do it. But
but what happens if we bring in like a D'Antoni and D'Antoni starts playing Randall at 5, right? And just opens up space for us, right? Like, and Randall stops getting less like isolation, like offensive rebounds, post up, get stuck.
Yes,
reset,
I think him in motion would make a ton of sense. But that's why I think there are guys out there. Go get Quinn Snyder was great. I think even bring up Johnny Bryant, who Donovan Mitchell loved. Like, guys that stars love. Like, go get these guys and just have them play. Kenny Atkinson would be a great fit.
It's also like we could think about RJ at Duke playing next to Zion on Reddish. Obviously, they had a couple of shooters, but Zion wasn't necessarily a shooter in college, and they got out and ran. Knicks never play with pace, and when they do, they look good. Obi can run. Randall can run. Barrett can run.
Yeah, if they want to. And the problem is Tibbs.
They don't.
Tibbs enables lazy play. He wants to slow the game down. His defense is so antiquated. It's ridiculous. Just all right. Let's just allow 43s, wide open threes a game. Like, come on. You're never going to win with that. And like, unless you adapt, which he hasn't. Right. So
there's a reason why Tibbs got let go from a couple teams.
It's the 3-year cycle. He comes in, they overperform. 2nd year, you're like, the regression's there. 3rd year, you're like, all right, this is it. It's happened everywhere he goes. So we're back. It's exactly what I was afraid of when they hired him in the first place. Now, Leon Rose is too good of friends with him. He was his agent and everything, and isn't letting him go. So this is something that should have happened in the offseason and didn't, and now it's carrying out, and it's making things very bad for the Knicks. So hopefully Randall can keep upping his trade value, but until I see him off this team and Tibbs off this team, I'm going to be angry every night. I'm going to be angry every night.
All right.
I'll leave you on that note, Luke, knowing that I'm angry every night because the two of them are on this roster.
I'll keep you in my prayers. I don't get angry at the games, but I definitely become like I turn the games off early. I'm like, I can't watch this anymore.
I go down with the ship when they're blowing every lead they have in the 3rd quarter. Yeah, I go down with the ship. All
right, there's some good games on. Celtics are coming to a close here against the Raptors, up 12. Sixers Rockets is actually pretty close, so that might be a good game, especially with the Sixers down. The late game though is Pacers Warriors, which is not a great game.
That's not great.
There is also Monday Night Football on, so if you're interested in football,
I think we got Brady tonight. Little action.
It's Brady versus Dalton, obviously a elite quarterback battle.
Prime time matchup right there.
So good night for sports. We want to thank our listeners for tuning in.
It's going to be an even better morning for Hoop Troop listeners, knowing that this is coming out. But all right. Well, for those of you who have made it this far, thank you for dialing into this episode of the Hoop Troop podcast, and join us next time.